Oh my goodness, do we have a lot to get to. Welcome everyone to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper. And also, since we are here live from Arch Madness in St. Louis, need to give a shout out to our buddy Ross Peterson from Agency Iowa as well for helping us get to St. Louis. So thank you, Ross Peterson. Go check him out at Agency Iowa as well. But yes, a lot to get to. So last night, when I pre-recorded the podcast after the first round of the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, I'll be honest, I was worn out from waking up super early to driving 5 hours to get to St. Louis and then sitting and covering four Missouri Valley Conference games. I was worn out. It was still fun to do the podcast. I'm not trying to complain. I'm just saying tonight has a different feeling because while I got up really early and had a blast with Ross on the rush, and got to watch four really good Missouri Valley Conference quarterfinals games, tonight's show, and I'm saying tonight because, of course, like I said, pre-recording it, so it'll be out early in the morning for you fans to be able to watch and listen to. But recording this podcast tonight, I have a jolt of energy. I don't know how you couldn't after one watching that UNI Valpo finish, which was incredible. My prediction for game of the night was far off. But on top of that, we have coaching news. I mean, hours after Murray State loses, some big news for Racers fans. So a lot to get to today. We'll break down, of course, game by game from the quarterfinals, preview the semifinal round games as well. But really, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the St. Louis Arch Madness tour that Media Row is doing, and how, in January, we had no followers. We had no downloads. We didn't even really have a logo. And now we've gotten to this point in a short amount of time, and that is all because of you guys. So thank you so much. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment at wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. Make sure to like and comment as well. So thank you again so much. None of this would be possible without you, sponsors, and Kelly's Little Nipper and Ross Peterson at Agency Iowa. But let's jump into the games yesterday, starting off with the Drake Bulldogs taking down SIU in the first quarterfinal game. They won 70-53. They now get set to face Belmont today at 2:30. Belmont took down Illinois State in a game that I thought was going to be way more entertaining and way closer. The scoreboard doesn't do it justice, but they beat Illinois State 76-63. Drake in that game, though, against SIU, slow starts, sloppy play, bad shots, and was just really kind of lucky that SIU was bailing Drake out with these kind of ticky-tacky foul calls on the refs, and we'll get into the refs a little bit too, because there was another game that the refs controlled as well. But Drake just came out looking like a team that had almost too much time off. And it's funny to say that because this whole trip, we've been talking with Bennett, we've been talking with Coach, talking with experts about how a team like Drake that has starters playing 39 plus minutes, how do you expect them to try to play 3 games in 3 days? But yet, then sometimes too much rest is too much of an issue. They came out looking cold, they came out sloppy, and it's just something they can't afford to do. They can't afford to have another slow start like they're getting accustomed to lately, just with the offensive talent that Belmont has. And Belmont jumped out to a quick lead versus Illinois State where they jumped out 21-7. They led 41-18 at the half as they beat Illinois State 76-63. But Southern Illinois, they tried to really take Sturts out of the game. Their game plan defensively was clear as day, and it was get the ball out of Bennett's hands and make someone else beat them. And Drake made them pay. And Coach McCollum said in his press conference afterwards about how there's teams out there that think they know how to guard Drake. And I'm paraphrasing here. You can go watch the full press conference interview and answers from Coach Bennett and Isaiah Howard on our Twitter at Media Row Pod. Again, usually I stick the clip in here at media or here on the episode. The internet here at the hotel is really struggling. I can't send myself the video that I recorded to my computer. So again, apologize for that, but if you want to go check it out, it's out there on our social media. It's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok as well of Coach McCollum. Basically, as I'm paraphrasing here, saying how teams are going to focus on the Valley Conference Player of the Year and really try to make him beat or make someone else beat them instead of Bennett Sturts, because they saw Bradley do it, and Bradley did it really efficiently when they beat Drake in Des Moines. And so that's what SIU was trying to do. But it just didn't work because Drake had their bench come alive and they were able to get rebounds. So let's dive in more deeper of how the Drake Bulldogs were able to win this game, this quarterfinals game, advance to their 7th straight semifinals appearance. I originally said 4. If they win today against Belmont, it'll be 4 straight championship game appearances. So I had it backwards, and fans on Twitter helped me out by saying no, it's actually 7, which is even better. Just I guess next time, instead of trying to get cute with numbers, just say Drake simply wins is how I commented back. But number 1, and I'm bringing this one up first, even though it probably wasn't the biggest reason Drake won, but it just made me look smart for once, because I said rebounding will be vital for Drake to take down SIU, and they did that, controlled the glass. Even when they were having their sloppy start to the game, it was a huge part as to why SIU couldn't break out, because Drake was getting the second chance opportunities. They were getting the offensive boards. They had 14 offensive rebounds against SIU. And SIU and Drake are very similar in size. They don't really have a huge big man. They both match up very well in terms of just size and height. And so Drake, though, Tavion Banks was incredible. And I was starting to chew my fingernails when Tavion Banks in that first half goes out with 2 fouls and is having to sit for most of that first half. I think with about 9.5 minutes to go, because he had been so huge on getting second chance points for the Drake Bulldogs and getting those extra opportunities where they could kick it out to Isaiah Howard or just put it right back up. So a huge reason Drake won was controlling the glass. Number 2, and it's something Drake has done all season long, it's their most consistent aspect of their team, and that is just strong defense. They were annoying SIU. They were getting in their heads. They were causing headaches. They were getting the foul calls, whether you like them or not. They got the foul calls. And one thing I was really impressed with watching this game is just the way they hedge screens. Of really, that I think that just shows the communication growing. Even this late in the season, these teams are improving, and that's what you want to see. And that was something I was noticing against SIU, was the communication. For the offense being sloppy and sometimes looking like they were confused, defensively they weren't. Defensively, they were calling out screens. The guards were able to hedge those screens, and they were reading passing lanes to perfection all game long. And 19 points off of turnovers is huge in this game. And we mentioned that after the Indiana State SIU game, of how watching Indiana State, we knew what Drake had to do. And that was take advantage of what SIU was going to give Drake. Because SIU, a good team, not great in controlling the ball. They sometimes get sloppy with it, try to make an extra pass that isn't there. And Drake being the strong, aggressive defense, it was huge for them to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And that's what they did, 19 points off of turnovers. And while the defense and while crashing the glass was huge for Drake, Let's talk about the freshman and Isaiah Howard once more. He's only 18 years old, playing on the biggest stage in his college career so far in a quarterfinal game for the Drake Bulldogs, and he shines bright. 21 points, a career high, 6 steals, a career high, which actually was tied fourth most in a single game in Arch Madness history. He played 36 minutes out there because Isaiah Jackson, I still don't know if he's 100% with that left ankle. Abreu, though, picked up 3 quick fouls, so he had to sit most of the game. So they were looking at him to really go out there and stay out on the court. And for a freshman who had struggled with fouling a few weeks ago, locked in when it mattered most in this quarterfinal game, played 36 minutes when Abreu had foul trouble. And then McCollum hinted in that press conference about how some teams, just kind of will try to make anyone but Sturts beat them. And they kind of forgot about Isaiah Howard. And I think SIU learned the hard way, and now I don't think it will happen again because no one's forgetting Isaiah Howard anytime soon after the performance he had. It was incredible from an 18-year-old freshman here in St. Louis. 21 points, 6 steals, just doing it on both ends of the court. So really impressed with Isaiah Howard, and that was huge. It was the defense and what Isaiah Howard was bringing. But Isaiah Howard wasn't the only one off the bench producing. Tavion Banks had 10 points, and of course we brought up what he was doing on the glass as well. So just, something we've brought up all year long with this Drake team is, can they get balance? Can they get some help when those starters play as many minutes as they do? We've mentioned, what happens if someone gets in foul trouble. Abreu gets 3 quick fouls, and this bench shows out. Tavion Banks, Howard combined for 31 points. SIU, their bench didn't show out. Only 6 points for the Salukis. So right there just shows the huge difference as why Drake is advancing to their 7th straight semifinal and SIU is packing for the road. So Drake will get set to play in their 7th straight semifinal, winning against SIU 70-53. They take on now Belmont, who Belmont and Illinois State, going into that game, I was telling everyone. I said it on The Rush with Ross. I texted, my dad, who is a big Missouri Valley fan, texting friends that this is going to be the game of the night. Just because I thought it was going to be a call and response type game. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, it was not. Belmont jumps out onto Illinois State 41-18 at the half, and it was just ugly. Illinois State was turning over the ball. Chase Walker was forcing so much in the paint, and it gets to a point when you're down 41-18, you're just trying anything to get the ball in the hoop. So I don't blame them, but it was just bad basketball for a long period of time. And in the second half, yes, Illinois State adjusted and started knocking down shots, but you do always have that thought in the back of your head of, now how much of this is Illinois State really making true adjustments, or is Belmont just having that human instinct of getting comfortable? And two things can be right, I think, with that statement. And the second half, it slows down, but overall, the Bruins just got off to a fast start, in Illinois State, even them putting up whatever it was, 40 points in the second half, wasn't going to get them to the promised land. 6 Bruins in double figures, Illinois State with only 2. Chase Walker doesn't put up double digits, and I can't remember the last time he didn't put up 10 plus points. And now I'm not going to reveal a source, and I don't know how much truth of this, but there are rumors circulating here in St. Louis that could have been possibly Chase Walker's final game here in the Valley for Illinois State. Because of the transfer portal, because of the growth we've seen from him, and he's from Columbus, a lot of people are wondering if he may try to transfer to Ohio State. Not going to reveal my source, but that was something I did hear here in St. Louis. And as someone who loves the Valley, as someone who has really praised Chase Walker throughout this season, I would hate to see him go. But as someone who just also understands this new day and age of college athletics, and if I was a 20-year-old star athlete with an opportunity to play at a bigger college, possibly get more money from NIL, you're going back home to Columbus. He probably grew up an Ohio State Buckeye. You can't blame a kid. You cannot blame someone for doing that whatsoever. I will never bet or never blame someone for betting on themselves either. So just a little rumor circulating with Chase Walker. But talking about Belmont, this was a team, I didn't pick them to win that game. I picked Illinois State, and I mentioned it because of just their inconsistencies with this offense. Yes, they're the Valley's top scoring offense, and yesterday we see why. Because when they're firing on all cylinders, it's a thing of beauty. Because it isn't just jacking up huge threes. It's ball movement with purpose, too. They move the ball around well. If they can get, cuts and just clean passes, this is a really exciting offense to watch. But with that being said, they have a great offense, bottom tier defensively. And I think they rank 12th because Indiana State was 11th, if I remember correctly. So that's my issue with Belmont. So, during the little hour and a half kind of intermission that the media gets and, fans exit, and then the fans for the second half of the 4 games comes in, I was looking at the stats, and you'll find this interesting, of just Belmont against top defenses in the conference, how they performed. They went 1-4, and when I bring up top defenses, I'm bringing up the top 3 in Bradley, Drake, and UNI. Those are the top dogs defensively in this conference. Illinois State's in there too. Illinois State's top 5 defensively as well, but those have been the most consistent defenses all season long. And against UNI, Drake, and Bradley, they went 1-4. They beat Bradley. They lost by an average of 9.5 points. They only shot 37% in those games and averaged 10 turnovers. In other games, weirdly enough, averaged more turnovers with 11, but their field goal percentage jumped up from 37% to nearly 50%, 47% against the other teams. So that's why it gives me more comfortability that Drake against this Belmont team is going to cause so many issues because they're so fundamentally sound defensively. The more I watch Ben McCollum, the more I'm just seeing Billy Donovan 2.0. Honestly, with the tie, they even have the Widow's Peak matching. In the style and the fundamentally sound and the conditioning of these players that Ben McCollum has with Drake is so reminiscent of those brutal defensive beasts down in Florida back in like the mid to early 2010s that Billy Donovan had. And I was a huge Patrick Young fan back in the day too. So I loved those Florida teams. And the more I feel like that Spider-Man meme where you see him with the glasses, without the glasses, struggling to see, and it's kind of blurry, and it may be Ben McCollum, and then you put on the glasses, and it's just Billy Donovan 2.0. But so Belmont, Drake at 2:30 today as the semifinals get started here on a Saturday at St. Louis. Now, before we move on to our second games, let's make sure to give a huge shout out to our title sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper. Kelly's Little Nipper, of course, brand new to Media Row, our first sponsor. Really appreciate them because, of course, like I've said 1,000 times, and you're going to hear me say it even more throughout this month, of just how none of this would have been possible without their help, and really excited to, again, just grow and see what we can do. But Kelly's Little Nipper, 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Make sure to check them out. Great food, great drink, and great community, as always. Great atmosphere, too. And it's been cool because now we're getting to the point people in St. Louis are walking up and being like, what's this Kelly's Little Nipper? Because, of course, for those watching on YouTube, you see my sweatshirt because I'm trying to decorate this hotel room a little for you. I got the logo pointing out, and so I was wearing that the first day on Thursday, and people were asking me what Kelly's Little Nipper was. And so it's been awesome to kind of show them the Facebook page. They have over, 10,000 followers on Facebook. So showing people just the community that they've built and why I'm so giddy about being a part of this with Jeff and everyone at Kelly's Little Nipper. So make sure to go check them out. 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. And if you do go, make sure to tell them that Media Roast sent you. So, moving on to the final two games from last night. Starting off with Bradley against Murray State. Bradley sneaking through in an athletic back and forth battle, 70-62 against the Racers. The first half was kind of what we thought would be picture perfect for the Racers. I didn't think it would happen. I brought up how we know their athleticism. We know they're not afraid to play against bigger teams, but I just think Bradley is going to win this game because they have too many players. They have great depth, and their backcourt is strong, just as strong as their front court. Very balanced team. But in that first half, it was picture perfect for Murray State, up 28-27, and they were just forcing Bradley to not be themselves. Poor three-point shooting. Getting out rebounded, which was a huge shock, just because, there's guys feet taller, it seems like, on Bradley than Murray State. And they were out rebounding them early, 14-11, and that was huge because Murray State, very similar to the Drake game, was just getting those second chance opportunities and making up for them. So you're seeing Bradley not the same Braves team that we're used to seeing. And their three-point shooting, they lead the NCAA with a 41% shooting percentage from behind the arc and ended the half 2 of 9. So Murray State takes the lead 28-27. You go into that second half, and Bradley wakes up. Here's the Bradley we're known, that we're used to seeing. They got the bigs involved. Hannah, 17 points. Janovic with 9 points, including great performances from Duke Dean and Zeke Montgomery. But they were just utilizing their size in that second half. And that second half was kind of back and forth for a while. But then it was really those final 6 minutes where Bradley escaped. And it happened because Bradley locked in and they shot 4 of 6 from the field. And then were getting fouls. So they went to the free throw line and they made their free throws. 9 of 13 at the free throw line. Had Bradley fans behind me, which we'll get to because I'm sure you saw my tweet. But had Bradley fans behind me, they were sitting there, and right there as Duke Dean goes to the free throw line in those final 6 minutes, he says the cliche, but it's true, of this wins you games. You have to make these. And they went 9 of 13 from the charity stripe, while on the other end, Murray State couldn't buy a shot. 4 of 15 to end the final 6 minutes. And so Bradley outscores Murray State in the second half, 43-34, wins 70-62 to advance to the semifinal round. And Murray State, heck of a push by them, and were making things difficult for Bradley on both ends of the court. But really we saw why Bradley is as balanced and as good as they are because of the coaching, because of the style of, there were so many times Bradley could have gotten pissed and really ruined the game for the team by individual, frustrations. And that's something that's been a common kind of storyline we've brought up on this podcast of picking out, of what players are getting, in their own heads and causing issues. We praise Isaiah Howard for being as young as he is, for he gets upset as himself, but he doesn't ruin it for the team. There was 47 fouls in that Bradley Murray State game. To not lose your mind when the refs are really controlling the game and not being consistent whatsoever on both sides. But then Bradley has 23 fouls on themselves. For them to keep their composure in a tight, hard-battled game and finish those final 6 minutes, only missing 2 shots, hitting free throws, and locking down on defense without fouling, was really impressive. And it just speaks to what Wardle has done in his time as a head coach, very reminiscent to how Ben Jacobson handles those tough games when kind of the refs are, controlling the game. It was very reminiscent of Jacobson in that sense. So very impressed with just this veteranship from Bradley, and again, might be the most balanced and deep team now in the semifinals. Before we move on to what ended up being the game of the night, the huge news that dropped a few hours after Murray State loses to Bradley. Steve Prohm is out. Yes, head coach Steve Prohm will not be returning as the Racers head coach, losing records in the Missouri Valley in the past 2 years and never finished higher than 6. Those were the 2 reasons given in Peter Thamel's tweet about Prohm not being the Racers head coach for next season. I don't know why, though. They were right there with Bradley. They have a good team. But as a Missouri Valley team, I wonder who they're thinking they're going to get next. Because I think Prohm is a good coach. Now, was he ever going to win a Missouri Valley Conference title? I don't know. But it just feels, this one shocked me. I didn't see it coming whatsoever. I think the leash is longer for a mid-major, so when you make it to the quarterfinals, when you had opportunities throughout the season of you beat UNI, you beat Drake, both on the road, you competed with Bradley. You're seeing that the team has opportunities to be up there with the big dogs in the conference right now. This one just completely took me by surprise, but Prohm no longer going to be the head coach, according to Peter Thamel on Twitter, for Murray State. So that one really shocked me. And it shocked me just as much as what ended up being the true game of the night. UNI and Valpo, a nail-biter as Valpo wins 64-63, first 11 seed to upset a 3 seed. And it really stems from their 2 stars. Valpo and Cooper Schwieger and All Right combined for 47 points. And it didn't look like it was going to be a nail-biter whatsoever. First half, it was all beacons. Only 3 2-point possessions. This comes from Mike Mahon, who, if you do not follow him on Twitter, make sure to give him a follow at Mahon Sports. He used to be the Drake SID. He's been huge in helping me not only get interviews, but just building contacts here in St. Louis and also just all around the country. So I've been very grateful to Mike Mahon, but he finds some crazy stats, and he finds this one that I don't even know I could have done in a video game. But Valpo in that first half only had 3 possessions that ended with 2 points. Other than that, they were all 3-pointers. They shot 10 of 15 from behind the arc and were in control at halftime. But you're watching it and you're going, yes, they're making 3-pointers and they're looking like they won't miss. But UNI is getting what they want too. Shooting 54%, you'll never complain about that as a coach. But it It felt like as soon as I wrote down in my notes early in that first half when you and I was like up 11-3, I wrote down in my notes, man, you and I is getting across the arc and really getting fighting through screens and causing issues for Valpo. It's been impressive to watch. As soon as I wrote that down, all of a sudden they forget how to guard the 3-point line, and Valpo goes off for those 10 3-pointers. But yet you still had this feeling that, okay, to start the second half, just continue to build on the ball movement that you and I was having and continue to shoot at a high clip because you felt like Valpo's was going to be less sustainable. Polar opposite. Second half, first 8 minutes appeared to just be a blowout. Only one Valpo turnover in the 33 minutes of action played at that time, and you and I just couldn't do anything. Down 19 going into the under 12 media timeout, and this is when Jacobson works his magic, and this is why we talk about how Ben Jacobson could be 15 and 15, but still wouldn't be shocked if he ends up playing for a championship on Sunday going into this tournament. Every year, he just knows how to adjust, and that's what he did. And what you and I did to adjust and slowly creep into this game after the under 12 media timeout was they were trapping, and a Valpo team that only had one turnover in the first 33 minutes of the game ended up turning the ball over 5 times, and you and I slowly goes from a 10-0 run to a 15-0 run to then a 20-0 run, coming back from 19 down with under 4 minutes to go, and they're right back in this thing against Valpo. But it was clear they looked gassed. And the announcers on ESPN Plus, I heard them talk about how it was very similar to what we saw with Drake and Indiana State last year. Indiana State in the championship game makes that huge comeback, but they were just worn out and used all their energy, and Drake ended up being able to pull away. This one, they just seemed gassed there towards the end, kind of sloppy passes, but we're still right there. We're only down 1 with only a few seconds left. And again, the ESPN Plus broadcaster, I wish I could have remembered his name because he said a great line of, these coaches aren't calling plays, they're calling players. Because All Right, the freshman of the year in the Valley, makes a layup with about 10, maybe 8 seconds left in the game to put Valpo up 64-63. And then instead of having, Trey Campbell, who's the true point guard for you and I, bring up the ball, Jacobson makes sure the ball gets put in his best player in Titan Anderson's hands. So Titan Anderson gets a good look, gets swatted away from Schwieger. Then there's only about 2 seconds left. They inbound it. Anderson's double team has a look, goes off the glass, no good. Game over. And Valpo becomes the first 11 seed to upset a 3 seed, 64-63. Second time now they've gone to the semifinals since 2019, I believe. And they will take on Bradley, who Bradley has had Valpo's number. They've won 8 straight against the Beacons. Earlier this year at Bradley, the game did go into double overtime. But other than that, Bradley has just controlled this. And while Valpo has become the Cinderella team of this tournament, and why I mentioned to Travis and Ross that it's dumb that the Big Ten is kicking out teams without them even having an opportunity to play in their own conference tournament, is because you don't get stories like this then. Every team deserves a chance, because otherwise, if we kicked out the bottom 2 teams, Valpo's not even in this discussion. And look at what they're able to do. Now, is it sustainable against Bradley? Like I said, the deepest team, the longest team as well. Valpo has some size that they can compete with Bradley, but again, I just think Bradley's depth is going to be way too much. So, a busy quarterfinals. It's going to be another fun semifinal Saturday. To wrap up this podcast, to give you my picks, again went 2-2. I'm trying really hard, guys. I swear I know the stuff. Um, but I believe Drake takes down Belmont in that game one because of just how fundamentally sound this defense is. Again, against SIU, it just proved that Sturts doesn't need to put up 30 for this team to win. What they need to do is just get a little bit of bench production, and they got a little more than a little bit with Isaiah Howard and Tavion, but get a little bit of balance offensively, and then most of all, just control the clock, control the pace of the game, and get turnovers. And I think Belmont, a team that really doesn't have a great stat line against these top teams in the Valley, is going to struggle, and Drake's going to go to their fourth straight Missouri Valley Conference championship. In terms of the second game, Bradley's depth and Bradley's length ends the Cinderella story of the Valparaiso Beacons. So, we will see what happens. Make sure, as always, to follow along at Media Row Pod on Twitter, or Justin _C Miller on Twitter as well. I always put that information at the end of the show. A huge thank you to Casey and Devin, the photographers, letting me use their photos. DKG Images is where you can find Devin. Thank you guys so much for letting me use your photos. And as always, a huge thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper for being the title sponsor. Also, thank you to Ross Peterson at Agency Iowa. And finally, thank you, listeners, for making this possible for me as well, and growing this with me and being a part of the Media Row family. We will be back Sunday morning to preview the championship round. Someone will be punching their ticket, the first ticket of the 2025 Big Dance. So make sure to tune in. We will be here in St. Louis live with more updates tomorrow, so be sure to follow along. Have a great day and enjoy some great basketball this weekend. We will see you tomorrow morning to preview the Missouri Valley Conference Championship.